Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the Ambassador of Common Sense, and I'm here with...
Dan, the Ambassador of Nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
We got kind of an adult show today, because we're going to talk, after the bishops in Germany, and it's not just the bishops, it's the whole church, it's the laity too, but I guarantee you they blocked any dissenters from their opinion, but supposedly the entire Church of Germany saying, well, homosexuality isn't wrong anymore. And after the German Synod gives this document, I guess the document is supposed to go to Rome, and Rome what? Just looks at it? What's the point of all this? I don't understand. I don't even understand why they do this.
Well, so... As far as I've been able to decipher, and this is by reading a few different like America. What's the Jesuit magazine? American Magazine or America Magazine or whatever the Jesuit one, and a few other sites that are clearly in support of the German bishops' attempt within their synodal way to change the sexual teachings of the church. What's going on is that they had this document that proposes some changes to the sexual teachings of the church, and we can we'll come up with some of the nuggets, quote nuggets during our show, but it did not get approved by the German. Now, if it had gotten approved by the German bishops, it really wouldn't mean anything other than that the Germans are heretics. It would maybe place them into some kind of weird position as informal heresy or something like that.
Okay, I don't understand.
Which the Pope would have to adjudicate.
Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm misunderstanding here. I thought they came up with this document, they voted on it, and they didn't have...
And it didn't pass.
And then...
They didn't have enough votes.
And then they voted again, only they made it a secret ballot, and it did have enough votes.
No, it was actually the other way around. When it was a secret ballot, they had fewer votes. So then they launched on this campaign, said, no, we're not going to have secret ballots. We're going to drag you all out in the open for opposing this stuff. Yeah. And we're going to call you homophobes and everything. And then they got a lot more votes in favor, but still not enough to make it pass.
Okay, I was under the impression that it did.
At least that's how I.
That it did get enough votes. They did. Okay, they did it as secret. It didn't pass. Then they did it public, and it did pass. That's what my understanding was. That's what Taylor Marshall's reporting.
So, I'm reading from 5 days ago, Catholic News Agency. After the bishops blocked a vote demanding changes to the church's teaching on sexual morality at the German Synodal Way, organizers on Friday voiced displeasure with the outcome and vowed to take it to Rome.
Taylor Marshall reported on the 12th, which is Monday.
I know. I think he was just reporting on the content of this document. Did he say that they actually passed, or just that this was the document they were trying to pass?
He said that they tried to pass it with a secret ballot, and it didn't pass. And then they made the ballot public so that each bishop had to put his name to it, and it did pass.
Yeah, I don't think it did. I think he's incorrect about that.
Maybe
because I can't find any news article that says that it passed.
Okay. This was in America Magazine that reported.
I'm looking at America Magazine, Catholic News Agency, New Ways Ministries.
I don't know what to do here. I don't know if we should go on with this because we don't know. I thought...
But it doesn't matter because this was just going to be a lead into our topic anyway.
Okay. Well, look. The topic is about homosexuality. There are 1,001 proofs that homosexuality is wrong, and it's shown to be wrong in the Bible over and over again. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, and this is why this is an adult conversation, because we're going to be pretty explicit here, about what sodomy, specifically sodomy, is, and why it's so wrong, and why it's one of the sins that cry out to heaven. It's one of the top sins. It's one that you're going to get chastised for more than if you would just say, stolen something, or any of the other mortal sins. Let's say fornication. And I guess we should start with an appreciation of what sex is. Not just with people, but actually what reproduction is. I mean, if you talk about single-cell organisms, they have several ways of reproducing. Some of them have binary division. Some of them bud, where it just grows another person and breaks off and becomes that not a person, but another thing,
another
entity
thing. Yeah, like
and
sponges, I think, do that or something like that, right? Stuff like that. Yeah.
And of course, a sponge, when you've got a parent sponge and a budded sponge, can you genetically tell the difference between those two? Really?
No. I mean, but genetically, no.
Okay. Same with mitosis. It takes the genes and reproduces the genes and then splits them apart into two separate, to the point where you couldn't say this is the parent and this is the child cell. They're the same cell.
Exactly. It's kind of like if you take a rock and you cut it exactly in half, and then you say, okay, which one is the original, and then which one is the other half that came from the original? It's a meaningless question.
It is a meaningless question, but where it differs is
it is in the case of genetic mitosis.
Right. But the big difference is that in the rock, you end up with two rocks, and each of them are
different. Yeah, from neither one is the parent. Exactly. Because they're both half. Neither one is whole. In mitosis, both sides get restored to the whole, and now you have two whole rocks, or, chromosomes, that are indistinct, and neither one is the parent, and neither one is the child. They are simply new copies of an original. Neither one is the copy, and neither one is the original.
Right.
That's the weird thing about how genetics works.
And it's, I would just point out that it's something that we should marvel at once in a while, because there's nothing else like that in nature. And other than virtual things, there's nothing like that we can make. I mean, we can make programs do that, but programs aren't real. They're just instructions.
The only other thing I can think of that's even close is fire.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think of that even comes close. But even with fire, there's usually there's the original flame, and then you can get another flame from it, and now you've got but the original flame is identified by the material that it was burning.
Right.
By from this candle to that candle.
It can't be
now they're both whole flames,
itself.
But yeah, exactly.
It always needs the
DNA,
the substance to burn, and then
right.
Yeah. So when you get into plants, it changes a little bit, because the single cell initiates that division on its own. But with plants, we're using sex now. We're using, an egg, and I don't even know what you call it in a plant.
Often it's a pollen. That's what the pollen is.
The pollen fertilizes the egg, and while it I don't think it ever is initiated by itself. Some kind of outside force has to exert on it.
Well, yeah,
whether it's wind or a bee,
once in contact, they can. Like, for example, on corn, you've got the corn silk, which is the tubules that lead down to the ova, and then you've got the tufts at the top of the tassels on the top of the corn. Well, that's where all the pollen is. And then the wind comes by and it blows all the pollen all over from the tassels, and then some of those get on the ends of the corn silk, and then they travel down the corn silk and then fertilize the ovum. Each silk goes to one ovum, and then when it gets fertilized and that grows, that becomes one kernel of corn.
So, two things to note here. One, again, it takes an outside force. Something else initiates it.
Get it together. Or bees in a lot of flowering plants.
Yeah, like butterflies or bees. Number two, we have a slightly different thing happening in that the new ear of corn is different than the old ear of corn. You can find the difference between them genetically, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you've got the that's in fact that's what Mendel's all of Mendel's like genetic experiments with plants and stuff that sort of led to the genetic revolution. That's why corn seed and wheat seed and other kinds of seeds are so expensive, because these companies like what's the big one,
or something
Monsanto or whatever,
and
others, they spend so much time crossbreeding these various kinds of corn in order to get just the right thing. And in fact, they're a lot of times that's one of the things they'll do is like they'll say, okay, we want this corn, we want the ovas from this corn, the ova from this corn, and the pollen from this other corn, but we don't want the pollen from this corn to be able to get on to the ovum. And so what they'll do is they'll have the corn planted, and then they'll hire these bands of kids to ride in flatbed trucks, detasseling the corn along the rows and taking the tassels off and throwing them into buckets so they can be disposed, so that the corn will be pollinated by different corn of their choosing. And it's like many generations of this kind of stuff that they do to arrive at their seed, and then they sell the seed. And the seed they ultimately sell to farmers is infertile. It'll grow, but the corn kernels that you end up with, you can't go plant those and grow corn.
Right. There's something to be said here about the process itself. And because we're starting at kind of the beginning of creation, if you want to call it creation or evolution, whatever you want to call it, there's a point here that this process does a very specific thing, and therefore it has a very specific purpose. I mean, even if you ask an evolutionist, what's the purpose of sex? They would understand it to have a purpose. And if it has a purpose, it has a creator.
Yeah.
So,
they'll speak of it as purpose. They'll immediately say, "Oh, well, purpose. I really mean that it serves an end result."
Yeah. But they'll say the same thing about maybe a species becoming larger. Well, its purpose is so that they could withstand this other, predator or something like that. And
right. Or
everything
if it's faster,
to them has
so
a
it can
purpose.
evade or something. Yeah.
And
they evolutionists always speak in terms of purpose.
And no matter what camp you're in, the purpose of this process is to reproduce plants.
Yeah.
Right?
And not only to reproduce, but the purpose specifically of sexual reproduction as opposed to asexual mitotic reproduction that we've talked about before has to do with gene mixing.
Yeah.
It's not just the gene mixing as a side effect. Evolutionists will say that that's why it's important.
Yeah. The diversity of the genes is what
the
keeps
population.
it healthy.
Yeah.
But anyway, as we go on down the chronological line, we get to animals. And once again, we're having self-initiated reproduction, but in this case, it takes two different animals. Whereas a plant could not initiate the process. It needed some kind of outside force. The animals suddenly can, but generally not by itself. It has to have both male and female, which is just interesting, I always thought, because we went from self-initiating to needing an outside force. Now we're back to self-initiating, but there has to be some kind of cooperation.
Yeah. It's not... and Most plants, it's actually interesting because most plants are both male and female, like corn that I, talked about. There are plants that are exclusively male and exclusively female. Certain kinds of trees, for example, and I think even some of the flowering plants, although I'm not sure. So it's kind of like looking forward towards the more animal way of being. By the way, everybody, I am officially on vacation. I'm going to Ireland for a combination religious pilgrimage and whiskey distillery tour.
Lucky you. And I'm back from getting coffee. So, another thing that we have here is the mixture of genes to make a child that is different from the parents. And there's something special about this because, again, the parents contribute to the child, but they don't give up anything. And
that's true.
That process in itself, again, is somewhat miraculous because it only happens in life. And I think the process deserves a certain amount of respect. That's not to say we can't use it to either make a better animal or even to do something in a laboratory. But
yeah, I mean, certainly, we dog breeds, for example, are a purely human invention.
Yeah.
We breed similar kinds in order to develop. But even within a very strongly typed dog breed, and we know this as parents who raise children, this is a well-known principle, but it may not seem obvious if you just, on first blush without a sort of deeper understanding, I guess, of the genetics. But once you have this idea that, you've got the genes and you take half of the genes from the mom and half the genes from the dad and then combine them, and now you've got a child, and you would think, then the same two parents, mom and dad, if they have 6 kids, they're going to be 6 identical kids.
Right.
Well, no. It turns out that because of how the genes separate and how the combinations of each of the chromosomes, because you've got like 2 pairs of chromosomes, and then you've got each set of chromosomes pulls apart, and you only have one set of chromosomes on one of the, like an egg will have only one set of chromosomes, but the combination of which chromosomes it has is completely random among our, the 23 pairs we have. Yeah. Same thing for each sperm. And so you come up with this sort of lottery system where it would be nearly impossible for parents having child after child after child within their whole lifetime. If that's all they did and somebody else took the children away so they never had to stop making babies, it would still be nearly impossible for them to produce an identical pair of children, other than in the case of the identical twin phenomenon.
Yeah.
That sometimes happens.
And even identical twins, they're not the same. I don't, can you take
But this is true in the animal world too. I'm only bringing it. Go ahead.
If you had identical twins, could you tell them apart genetically?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, because the way that works is that you get the egg-sperm combination. Now you've got an egg, a fertilized egg, and then what happens is when that fertilized egg first splits using mitosis now, which does exact copies, it somehow separates completely.
Little accident.
And then each of those goes on to become a person.
Okay. The process is marvelous. And we could see God creeping ever closer to his main event. And during this time, remember that the angels are watching this. They're watching these. First, they watched the creation of matter itself, and then life.
And quite possibly some of the angels participate in it.
Right.
Obviously all such powers would be granted from God, but God, giving some of the angels certain directives about how to guide the creation of matter and stuff like that, or at least guide its formation.
There's no reason to think that wouldn't have happened, and I think you touched on that in one of our podcasts that you talked about St. Michael the Archangel. We go in kind of depth
right.
to the different angels and their different jobs, and that is a unique possibility. But they're looking at this, and it would seem that some of them are looking at the fact that these living things are being given powers that the angels do not have.
Oh, that's right.
You know,
an angel can't make another one of itself.
Right. Only
Nor can two angels make, another angel. The very idea of generation, that's one of the things that the angels, even though we have like we recognize, they call them the celestial spheres, the different classifications of angels. We've got the seraphs and the cherubs and the powers and dominions and virtues and so on and so forth. But each individual angel, at least, according to Thomas Aquinas and others who have thought about such things, each individual angel is a type unto itself, so that there cannot be other of that type, the way we can talk about humanity as a type and say that there are many humans.
Right.
And that's why, for example, we can all share in, say, the fall or something like that because we're a type. And we a multiplicity that all have that type. But angels aren't like that. So angels, they're watching this creation, and then suddenly this thing called life occurs on Earth, and suddenly bacteria are like making more of themselves through an internal process that is part of the power of the nature of the bacterium. And
if we look at God's setting here that he gave for them, they're not really, the only limitation is the environment that they live in. So it's not like there could be 5 billion of them and then they would say, all right, that's enough bacteria. It's going to keep going as long as whatever environment they're in will support them. And that's how many there are. Mm-hmm. However many it can be supported in a certain amount of time. Just want to point that one thing out. There's no limitation on this. It's natural to breed without limitation.
Yeah.
In fact, it's what living things strive to do, all of them. But the big change in all of this is rationality, which up until now, living things had not had. And now, certainly, there's some angels saying, hey, wait a minute, not only can these things regenerate, but now they're able to think and understand. And
yeah, they have agency.
As another hit to this is the fact that we are able to create, which is different from angels and from animals.
We can contemplate God and contemplate creation. Actually, we can't fully contemplate God. We can contemplate creation and then have a what's the right word? Have
a form,
an agency towards that creation. We can have the will for something and then act to bend that creation towards that will.
So.
Which is fundamentally what creation is. They obviously we have to. It's not creation ex nihilo like God does, but we build stuff,
right? And the angels can build things because if they wanted to manipulate materials, they could do that. But coming up with a notion, hey, you know what would look cool, and painting a picture of that's not something the angels can really do.
Because everything they can do, everything that they act, is given to them by God to act.
So
they have wills, but they don't have that. They actually don't have reason, which is something that we have, because they have wills and they have knowledge, but they can't reason to knowledge, which means that they can't reason through a lack of knowledge.
Right.
We have reason, which is the combination of our will and our knowledge with the mechanical operation of our brains.
Yeah. Now, a couple things here. You will get an evolutionist to accept that the reason for sex in the animals was reproduction. And you will get them to admit that some animals seem to use this as some sort of relaxing, as a way for them to relax or feel good. You'll never get them...
the drive, the sex drive, as it were. Yeah, that because animals, it's not like an animal thinks about reproduction.
Right.
It's more that the drive is there for the good of the population so that it's something the animals are inclined to do.
So, but you would never hear anyone say that the point of monkey sex is for the monkey to relax or enjoy himself or become closer to his mate. It's admitted that the monkey has sex so that they can have more monkeys. That's the only point of it.
Yeah. And in fact, to the extent that it is enjoyable to the monkey, the enjoyment is for the purpose of making more monkeys. It's the physiological, let's say the pleasure return, the positive reinforcement aspect is at the service of the population of monkeys.
And since we believe in God, we can just say that's why God made it that way.
That's how God God designed it.
That was his design.
And it seems so obvious,
it was a brilliant design, huh?
And it seems so obvious, too.
Right.
I mean, once understood, it seems obvious.
Right. I would think, a grade school kid could come up with that on their own if they were, say, raised on a farm, and they saw the way the goat got all excited when it saw another goat and tried to get at it, and it's like, well, that's because they can have more goats, and then we'll have a whole bunch of goats.
Yeah. I want that goat excited because that means milk for me later.
Milk and meat and hair. All kinds of good things come out of this. All of it coming out of sex, which is a natural drive that God gave animals so that he could populate the planet with those animals. But then again, something special happens, and we've got human beings who, first of all, are self-aware, second of all, aware of God and can contemplate God, and third of all, it did change something in sex. That we can't look at our sex and just compare it to animal sex and act like they're the same thing. There is a natural thing that happens when a man and woman have sex that doesn't happen with animals. There's a closeness, an adjoining of, even if it's not in marital sex.
Right.
I mean,
I was listening to a show, one of those Catholic shows. I forget his name. Some priest up in Michigan. Pretty good guy. He has a lot of good insights and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And he was talking about some movie. I forget the name of the movie, and he himself didn't really recommend that anybody go out and watch it, but he was kind of talking about how Hollywood, once in a while, comes up with something that they have no idea how right they are. And it's this situation where I think it's like a Tom Cruise movie or something like that. But anyway, he and this woman, they had sex or whatever. And then they're having this discussion, kind of this tense discussion that, I don't know whether you call it a breakup or whether the event was like a one-night stand or whatever. But she said, when you have sex, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact words.
Yeah.
Your body makes a promise even if you don't.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's so true, because that's when you bring that into the human realm, it's no longer just about a population, because when it comes to humans, and this is like one of those things that if you contemplate it, you really begin to see how elevated we are versus the rest of say, creation, or at least material creation. But when it comes to humans, an individual matters, not just the population. Every other species of animal out there, the individual doesn't matter. It's the population that matters.
Right.
Even dogs. I mean, I know that, like, we have pets, we have dogs. I was like, okay, well, my dog matters to me.
Yeah.
Okay, but in the real sense, in the universal sense, that your dog doesn't really matter. The universe would be the same with or without your dog, but not when it comes to humans. Every individual human matters, and that's why, at least partly why, human sex is different than animal sex.
Not only matters,
but why this closeness that results from it is a real promise made by the bodies, again, even if the individuals aren't aware of it and don't will it.
Not only matters, but matters eternally. I mean, when the reproduction does happen, because when
a baby's conceived, there is now a soul who will never stop existing, ever.
And in a sense, you could say a soul that will be a child of a mother and a father. Now, I don't know if those relationships exist in heaven or how that works out, but the reality is that it has a mother and a father who came together to do something.
And it has a body that will exist forever at some point.
That's right, it does.
Because we believe in the physical resurrection.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, the human sex has, every act of human sex has potential eternal consequences. Well, I guess, when people get older, I guess if past menopause and all that kind of stuff, I realize, but the point is, because of the nature of fertile human sex, the very act of human sex is different than animal sex.
Right. There's this, as I said before, we should have some respect for the act, even if we're just breeding animals. But now that's kind of supersized now, because, and to pretend that humans ever thought of sex as only a pleasure to take part in, that's idiotic. All through history, man and woman have a relationship that culminates in sex. That's how the ultimate relationship takes place, is by having sex. There's never been any time in history where that hasn't been true.
This is true, and what's interesting, I don't know if this is, I don't want to sidetrack too much.
Okay.
But in every culture, I don't believe that there has been a culture in the world in which a man being in a relationship with a woman, having had sex with her, or at least regular sex with her, or whatever, does not have those feelings of jealousy at the thought, or maybe the reality, of another man doing the same with that same woman.
Yeah, it's all through literature and history. I mean, that's part of it.
But what's interesting is that you look at, even in like Jewish history, it was not uncommon for men to have multiple wives.
Yeah,
I mean, even like Jacob had Leah and what's her name, Rachel. But I almost think that's not something that was natural and intended from the beginning. I think that's a consequence of the fall. That when God said, you will lust after your husband, and your husband, will be the Lord over you. I think part of what he was pointing out is that, hey, the guy is stronger, and you've just kind of introduced him to selfishness, and there's going to be consequences for that. I think that dynamic is maybe one of those consequences. And as we've come close to the coming of Christ, clearly by the time Christ came, the Jews did not think that it was appropriate for a man to have more than one wife at a time.
Right. And I mean, that was going to be something I touched on, is that because of the fall, the simple fact is men are stronger than women. And it's always been the case. And so throughout most of history, in most societies, men were able to have more than one wife, first of all. Second of all, those wives were always servants. I mean, practically slaves. That's just the way it is. It wasn't until Christianity that marriage was given a special kind of thing that elevated the act to more than just the woman pleasuring the man. But in a sense,
it created an equality. Now, I don't know what degree this equality, the sense of equality, existed in the Jewish conception of marriage, like right before Christianity. But Christianity, among all the other cultures of the world, introduced this concept of equality between men and women, in the sense that the man is as bound to the woman as the woman is to the man.
Right. Yeah. That is a Christian thing. But I guess we're not really there yet, because we're talking about man and woman naturally. And
just without the... Right.
Evident by all of history, naturally, there is a relationship between the man and the woman who have sex that does not exist in animals.
Every culture has a concept of something that looks like marriage.
Right. The two
like
are
a societal
bound.
Permission to have sex.
Yeah. And again, we have to point out that even though there's this new element to sex, and it's more than just physical enjoyment, there's a new element to it, but there's still one purpose that we can definitely say is there, and that is to populate. And there is extra reverence given because of the fact that that act has eternal consequences,
Right. Yeah.
There is reverence given to the seed of man simply because it has the potential to create eternal consequences.
You're like talking about like Onan, for example.
Yeah. I don't mean to act like, the Monty Python song, "Every Sperm is Sacred."
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was dumb.
Yeah, that was just stupid.
No one believes that or ever did believe it. But the seed of man, especially in combination with the act of sex, is sacred. Yes, it is sacred, very sacred. It has the power to make life, a life, not just life, but a life, different from that of the parents. So God gave us this gift that is elevated above all the animals, in that we could enter into relationships and produce life with this one act. And you do it in a very specific way. That's how you produce life, and that's how you make the relationship happen, is by that act of sex. All the other ways of abusing the bodies do not produce those two things. The natural purpose for these things is to produce life and to bring man and woman together. And you might say bringing man and woman together is more of a supernatural or transcendent purpose,
It's kind of that's something that almost deserves its own other podcast, because the unification of the man and woman. It's kind of funny. I've got symbols on the brain because of another project we're doing.
Yeah.
The unification of the man and woman is symbolic of God's, say, relationship with creation and a whole lot of other things. But it's also pragmatic, because it's the union of the man and woman. It's their married commitment to each other that is best suited to provide for the proper upbringing of the children that result from sex.
Right.
Not looking anything about religion, it's just that's the way it works naturally.
Right.
Now, and Jesus himself even said that in the kingdom there won't be marriages, because the Pharisees came and asked him about the widow who, married the sort of black widow problem.
Yeah.
She married man after man who died, and whose wife will she be in the kingdom? And Jesus said, well, you got it all wrong. That's not going to exist in the kingdom. So even the union aspect and the unifying aspect of sex is something that, while it has, for Christians, religious value as something symbolic and something that can lead us to a deeper understanding of, say, God and that kind of stuff. It is pragmatic. It's because that's what is best for the children that result from the act, and those children have an eternal existence, and they matter. Each one individually matters.
Right. And it's also best for the man and the woman. As
That
they
too.
were created, there's a best possible outcome here is for the man and the woman to get together. In fact, God created the world. He created animals. He created man. And then he said, this is no good. Man's alone. Man shouldn't be alone.
Yeah.
So he created woman.
Now,
The man and
we
the
don't
woman.
have to believe that there was a chronology that proceeded in that way, but we do have to believe that that is why we have man and woman.
Right. And that man and woman are supposed to be together
Yeah.
and not alone.
Right. And that's, that he said in the other one where it doesn't go into the details about putting Adam to sleep and taking the rib and that kind of stuff. He just says, and he created the man and woman and put them in a garden. And it says, in his image, he created him. Let's how does that
Them.
actually word? It's like
He said, in his image, he created them, male and female.
male and female, he created them. And then he placed them in the garden and said, multiply and fill the earth. Yeah.
So male isn't in his image on his own, and female isn't in his image on her own. The way
Right.
it describes it, they are in his image when they are together. So that's it's a super important part of this. But because of the fall of man, and because we started doing things that weren't good for us, we have a few hiccups in the natural order of sex. Starting with, not necessarily when it came about, but starting with contraception.
Oh, this idea of I want to have sex, but man, I don't want to have to raise a kid.
Right. It's disordered. It's not It's not good for us to do that. It's bad for us. And it's also bad for humanity. We're seeing that now, kind of. There are some places that can't quite bring their production up level to above the dying level, and
Oh, the replacement, yeah.
their populations are diminishing. But I'm just pointing out here that in a natural way, this is not good for man. It doesn't, and we also see that in 100 other ways psychologically, where problems stem from contraception. And that deserves its whole other show. But the point here is that the sexual act is a natural thing that was elevated to something above the animals, practically supernatural, and contraception is frustrating that. Contraception is thumbing your nose at what God gave us as a gift. Not just gave us, but something,
But
a good thing that we're supposed to
not
enjoy.
not like he imposed sex on us.
Yeah, nobody, oh, dang it. I have to have sex.
Yeah, I gotta have
I mean-
sex? Oh, come on, man.
That's gross. Yeah, it's so weird that the human race suddenly decided we want to have sex, but we don't want to have the reproduction. It doesn't really make natural sense. And the even darker part of that is that contraception never works 100% of the time, and eventually you end up with a baby. An unwanted baby, and guess what? The next stage there, since you've already decided you want to have sex but not have a baby, the baby's murdered. One of the sins that cry out to heaven.
Right. Yep. Yep. Infanticide specifically is one of those sins. Well, or I mean, even before the question of abortion, you've got these babies, okay, not wanted, and even then, I think a lot of times putting the abortion out, it goes one of two ways. Either the parents simply resent the baby and The baby has a poor life because of it, and I poor life in various ways. Or once in a while, and this is more of a supernatural thing, but I think it occurs through natural inclinations because, again, God designed us this way.
Right.
The parents realized that they were wrong to not want the baby.
Right. I think that happens a lot. I
think that really happens.
For some reason, a Stephen King story, I can't even remember which one, enters my mind here, and it's another one of those cases where he doesn't know how right he is, but he said something to the effect that an older guy is looking at the situation of a young couple who suddenly have to get married because there's a baby on the way, and he says something to the effect that I think most marriages happen this way instead of the other way around. In other words, most people have to get married because they gave in to their sexual desires,
they
and
get
now
into
they
so-called trouble.
have a baby.
Yeah.
There's nothing. The good comes out of that bad. The bad is ignoring the laws and obeying our passions, and the good is when we adhere to the law and say, "Okay, now there's a baby coming.
Let's get married. Got to raise a baby."
Good comes out of that because man is not meant to be alone. Man and woman are meant to be together, and they're supposed to have babies together. That's what we're supposed to do. Another part of this, and I would encourage people to listen to the podcast on overpopulation we made a couple weeks ago.
That's right. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. God wants us to have children. He made man and woman, and the first commandment given to them is have babies. God wants life. That's why he created the bacteria and all the plants and all the animals, and especially why he created man. He created man with the desire to reproduce. It wasn't, and then because that's what he wants us to do. He wants us to have children. And a lot of children. He's a
lover of life, and especially a lover of humanity and human life.
Yeah. I don't know of any times in the Bible where he
is against somebody having kids?
Right. That's not a thing. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't say you have too many children, have less. That's never happened. Now, obviously, if that's not your wife, you can't go having kids with her, but that was never a commandment of his. Why
but
suddenly...
even, King David, think about King David. He was, so wrong.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I got to answer this phone. Let me mark this.
I was just talking about King David and how he had the one guy murdered by putting him on the... In fact, he not only put him on the line, but he told his general that if he doesn't die, go ahead and kill him anyway, so that he could marry the man's wife.
Yeah.
But out of that union came King Solomon.
Right.
And eventually from whom came Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. Jesus came out of that line? I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure Jesus came from King Solomon, yes.
Okay.
I mean, he definitely came from David and through Solomon, because David is the son of Jesse, and the shoot from Jesse's stump is the prophecy in Isaiah and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess the overwhelming point here is the sacredness of the act combined with the sacredness of the that which the act creates. The sperm and the egg. These are part of the act, and in combination with the act, are elevated above what they were with animals. With animals, they deserved a certain amount of respect, but with people, more than respect, more reverence.
More than that, yes.
Because
reverence rather than just respect.
Because, as for all the reasons we've already said, and in the act of contraception, we take the seed of man and we throw it away. And that's... The reason it's a sin is not because of this irreverence. But this irreverence makes it more sinful. You know what I mean? It's like,
oh, right.
I can tell you why contraception is a sin, and it's not necessarily because I'm throwing away sperm or wasting sperm. That's not the way, again, Monty Python tries to frame this, is that we're saying you can't waste any sperm. Well, that's dumb, because each ejaculation has
So like,
hundreds
several
of thousands
million
of sperms.
and only one.
Only one is
Yeah.
used, if it's used at all. So it's not a matter of wasting it, but it is a matter of treating it reverently, because it's what ends up making life, human life, which is eternal, or it goes on forever, and it can't be erased. So the contraception is sinful partially because it takes the act and the substance in the act and treats it irreverently. Abortion is just so much more horrible because it takes the result of that act and murders it. And murder is
person and
always bad. And nobody needs to be told why abortion is so evil. It's just evil, evil, evil. But kind of a combination of these two is homosexuality, specifically sodomy. It is wrong for us to waste our seed. It is more than wrong to take our seed and put it in an area that is used for excrement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of like saying this gift from God is nothing more than the worst kind of waste product.
It's irreverent in a whole new way. It's taking one of the greatest gifts we have, that ability to create or beget a new life that is eternal, and throwing it away in a way that is thumbing your nose at this gift.
It's kind of like taking a sacred picture. I mean, this is going to be real gross. I apologize, but we already warned.
We're already
this is
real
probably
gross.
An adult podcast. It's kind of like taking a sacred picture and wiping your ass with it.
Yeah, it's blasphemous. Aside from being irreverent, contraception is
and
irreverent.
aside from the wrong. How do I want to say it? Aside from
disorder.
The incorrect use of the sexual pleasure and the incorrect pursuit of the sexual pleasure, the incorrect use of the sexual release, which is supposed to be about procreation and so forth. Aside from all that, there's this special, like thumbing your nose at something sacred that goes on specifically with sodomy. Yeah, you're right. I hadn't even thought of that before. So now you've got all these new thoughts coming out in my head.
Well, I don't know how true this is. I've been told that it's a big part of gay culture to have this weird fetish with excrement.
I know there is a fetish. I mean, it's like, which is, I don't know how.
I don't either. It doesn't make, it's hard to even talk about.
What would it mean to, even have a fetish? Yeah, that's.
But I know this exists. I can't imagine it existing in a man-woman heterosexual world, you know? Someone told me that it is often... Okay, a guy who works for one of those porta potty... Were you there at this conversation?
No.
Okay, this is one guy telling me what another guy told him. So, I don't know. And maybe I'll just cut this whole section out. But it is common to find gays having sex in a porta potty using the excrements that's there, like smearing it on it other.
It
seems super.
I can't even imagine.
Hard to believe. I don't know.
And that to me even more
rumor like
bizarre
that
than
gets started.
like the Sato thing.
Yeah, but the guy said he was told that not often, as in every day or even every week, but he didn't believe it, and then he caught them once when he had to go pick up one of the porta potties, and yeah, there were two guys in there.
Oh gosh!
Anchor, stop!
And they had
no, yeah, they were
reached down into and
yeah. I don't.
Oh man! But I guess that's
here's
the
the problem: is that I would even believe that. The reason that is believable is because, again, look where you're putting your seed. That's where it's going.
Yeah, that's exactly what. Yeah.
So, whether or not this is true, it's no more disturbing than the fact that sodomy involves this action, and that is a big part of why sodomy is so bad. Why it's only mentioned several times in the Bible. Maybe they thought they didn't have to talk about this, but it's one of those sins that are so bad that God destroys an entire city, nation, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
I was reading, as I was looking up information about all this, this bishop, I lost I can't even tell you who the bishop was.
Historical bishop or modern?
Modern, who wrote this article on the sins that cry out to heaven. And of course he mentioned...
Oh! Was it one of the ones we know, like Athanasius Schneider or any, like...
It might have been. But I don't know.
Or who's the guy in Texas that's real good?
No, this is not a good guy. This is more like...
Oh, this is not a good guy. Oh,
like,
so he's kind of like trying to twist the sins that cry out. Is he trying to say that the sin of Sodom is inhospitality?
Yeah, he mentioned that. He said it wasn't just that. It's like they were going to do evil things to the angels and do violence to them, and they were mistreating immigrants. That's what he thinks the sort...
Mistreating immigrants. No, it's...
God
because
did
the
not...
angels showed up after God had already decided to destroy the city.
God had already said, yeah, I'm going to destroy this
place. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
It is only for this reason. It is because of sodomy, and only because of sodomy, that they were going to be destroyed.
I mean, you even see that the Bible makes that so clear, because the angels show up and the men of the town say, hey, we hear there's some new men in your house. Send them out so that we can have our way with them. And Lot begs them. He even offers his daughters. He says, hey, take my daughters instead. These are holy men.
Right. And, it even describes men had stopped using the natural use of their gift, and women had stopped using the natural way of their gift, and it describes homosexuality. That's what it describes before the angels even go there. Yeah. They describe this sin. There's no question about this. There's no question about how angry it makes God when we take something so great as our ability to make more people and misuse it.
To make more of us.
Yeah, to make more of us. Something the angels can't even do. Something he told us to do over and over again because he wants so much for there to be more human beings, more souls that will share in his eternal joy.
To unite with him, to share his beatific vision, yeah.
Frustrating that at all is a mortal sin. But to take it and to put it in poop, that's indescribably blasphemous. And that was really the whole point of this podcast, is to describe how wrong it is to do this. This is not something that the German church can come and say, well, it's not good. And it's not something you can say, well, this guy likes this guy. These are all disorders. This is unnatural in every sense of the word. No two men are going to have this happen to them without having some kind of disorder. I think most of it stems from child abuse. But and most gays who have most men who have same-sex attraction and have sworn that off to try to live a chaste life will attest to the fact that, yeah, this kind of started with sexual molestation when they were children. I mean,
right.
That seems to be a common theme here. I don't know why so few people are willing to admit it. Now, there's something going on. I think there's also a... I think that's what most gays are. I think there's also like, if you abuse a gift like sex to the point where it no longer even captures your interest, yeah, perversions like this can happen.
Oh, like somebody who gets, let's say, introduced to non-gay sex.
Yeah.
I don't know, the age of 12.
And who's somehow able to engage in it nonstop to the point where it becomes boring.
Whenever he wants or whatever. Yeah, it's well, needs something. Hey, wow, Okay, yeah, I could maybe see.
I can kind of see that. I have a hard time seeing that even then.
Yeah,
but the overwhelming majority of gays seem to be, at least gay men, seem to be gay because they were abused and violated as children. Which a lot of people don't even... A lot of people are saying groomers instead of gays now. Because...
They're saying what?
Groomers instead of gays.
Instead of saying gays, they're saying groomers?
Grooming is synonymous with homosexuality. Because it seems like gays are always trying to groom.
Oh, yeah, they're trying to increase their own numbers.
Yeah,
but
generally with children.
So, I mean, back before people worried a lot about that, there was an article in, I can't remember the name of the magazine, but a psychologist had, done a lot of, like, studies about that kind of stuff, and he had his own theory that as a kind of a dominating factor, gayness arose from men having deficient fathers. And so their whole attraction to other men was a sort of disordered attempt to acquire the affection that they should have gotten from a father but never got.
Right.
But that doesn't lead to the sort of intentional perversion that a lot of gays have, I think.
Yeah.
And it certainly, I don't know that it necessarily leads to the grooming phenomenon. I think that there's something else going on that's deeper, more diabolical, and that sort of transcends human psychology.
Yeah, I think so too.
In gayness. I think that's the problem. That's the... If it were only a matter of those things that might naturally lead certain boys, certain men in that direction, I don't think it would be nearly as prevalent as it seems to be in our modern culture.
Yeah. And, another two things that kind of go hand in hand here. Because I don't know if you would call it sexual sin, but a sin against gender, at least, is described in the Bible. Men are not allowed to dress up like women, and women can't dress up like men.
Yeah, that's right.
Even in the Old Testament, long before there were dresses and pants, it was recognized that men and women dress differently and act differently. God wants all men to act like men and not to act like women. And the reason for that is because our gender, our sex, is a gift tied to reproduction almost as much as our body parts. You know what I mean? My maleness is what allows me to become a father. So it's part of the sex act, but it also allows me to do all the things in society that I have to do. And to reject that is rejecting a gift. And the same thing for women.
There's something about that too, that the sex act itself is a part of our animal nature.
Yeah.
But our maleness, aside from becoming a father, which is an animal thing, allows us, it's what, gives us the tools to be a father, which is not in the human world just an animal aspect of existing.
Right. You need strength to do certain things. Women lack that strength.
And it's kind of like being a father is in many ways part and parcel of being a husband, just like being a mother is part and parcel of being a wife.
Right.
It's in our husbandship that we exercise fathership and vice versa.
All of the body parts that allow us to be fathers allow us to be husbands, as in attracting our wives, and then protecting our wives, and in the same sense, all of the body parts that a woman has that attract men allow her to become a mother and then care for the child.
And then be a mother, yeah.
I mean, that kind of says it all on that. Our gender is a gift. And if we feel somehow deficient in that gift, which we all do, you make a mistake or you cower or something, you feel like less of a man, and you have to recognize that and try to do better. But to reject the gender is another slap in the face of God. Here's what you created. Here's what you gave to me as a gift. And instead of trying to make it better the way we're supposed to with our talents, and as in the parable of the talents, I'm going to smother it and then try to choke it out completely and try to be something that I'm not. A gift that you didn't give me, I'm going to try to obtain.
I didn't even intend to go in this direction on this podcast, but what you're talking about dovetails with a reflection I had a few days ago. And I forget what led me to it, but it's like our modern androgyny, this idea of trying not to see or acknowledge the idea of differences between men and women is a way for people, I think, to kind of, it's kind of a cop-out. If there's not a difference between men and women, then I, as a man, if we can be, let's say, gender fluid, because you get this whole transgender thing. Yeah. And maybe it's the transgender movement that really is the culmination of all of this. If I can be gender fluid, that means I don't have to be a man. Even though I'm a man, I have man parts. I don't have to be good at being a man. Or if I'm a woman and I have woman parts, I don't have to be good at being a woman. But guess what? If you don't have to be good at being a man and you don't have to be good at being a woman, that means you don't have to be good at being a human being. Yeah. Because to be a human being is to be a man or a woman. And I wonder if a lot of this is just an attack, not just like on humanity ultimately, not just the sexuality, but all other aspects of humanity. And so this whole like homosexuality movement is really
which
a
points
tactic
to it
in a bigger game.
Right, which points to it being more diabolic than anything else.
Well, the thing, we started with this whole bishops thing. This is interesting, because I'm going to circle back around to this while you're trying to find that point. I pulled up the document, which is the specific document that the German bishops, or the German synod, or whatever, want the Pope to say, yes, thumbs up, you got the approval, all of that is good. And I haven't looked at the document's overall structure, but I pulled in on this part. It's called Principle 5. I guess there are 4 previous principles that I haven't looked at. And the sentence is, the principles and criteria of sexuality lived out in Christianity, respect for self-determination and responsible sexuality, as well as fidelity, permanence, exclusivity, and responsibility for one another in relationships, also apply to homosexual people. Now, I don't I mean, respect for self-determination, I'm not even sure what that means, but to the extent that it means anything that's Christian, it's not a sexual thing.
Yeah.
Responsible sexuality, to me, sounds like chastity. Fidelity is, well, duh, that's in marriage, as is permanence, as is exclusivity. And then responsibility, to have and to hold. Okay, all of that is just marriage. But in these principles and criteria of sexuality lived out in Christianity, they seem to be missing procreation. This initial, the proto-commandment, you could call it. Multiply and fill the earth.
Yeah, that's sad.
It's like, it's in the first part of the first book of the Bible, and yet these bishops don't seem to recognize it as a principle of sexuality lived out in Christianity.
And here's aside from it being, one, an obvious part, number two, the main part, the main natural part.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's the best part of sex.
Yeah. The sexual pleasure is a few moments, but the pleasure of a child, obviously, as a baby, they're just fun, but then they grow into, manhood, and you have that relationship with them. Okay, yeah, sometimes those relationships go bad, and especially if they choose to go off on a non-Christian path and that kind of stuff. But but that apt relationship with your children as adults, that's the best part of it.
Right. There are men out there who would admit that if it wasn't for the act of sex itself, they would never get with a woman. I would even more so admit, if it weren't for the children, I don't think I'd ever get with a woman. Because it's hard being in a relationship. You got to put up with things, and
that's true.
It's not that hard.
It's like,
there is companionship, but it's not the same as
I could
see.
Depending on your level of libido, I could see that there might be men like, you're not worth the pleasure of the sex, but you are worth, the having children.
Yeah. Anyway, it is to me. I guess it ranks anyway, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Whether companionship or children are, one is better than the other, I don't know. I guess I couldn't say.
Oh, by the way, just in case my wife ever listens to this podcast, I don't count myself among those men.
Okay. Well, I guess that's about all we should say on the subject right now, because to me that's pretty much to think about.
That's a lot, yeah.
And it's just, again, we're not giving you the proof that homosexuality is evil. We're just telling you why it's so bad, why the church ought to be preoccupied with fighting this, and why we ought to be preoccupied with fighting this, especially in our society right now, where it seems to be overwhelming everything. It seems like everything has to be about gays now, and
which almost, it's like, how is God to read that? But well, those who listen to this podcast know that we don't discuss these things ahead of time, and I had not thought of your approach of look at it from the point of view of the angels. And I think that's brilliant. Did I hang up on you? I think I hung up on you. Hey, I guess I hung up on you accidentally.
Yeah, suddenly you were gone.
Okay, I was saying, and you'll have it in my recording, but you can cut the one. But I was saying, I had not previously thought about it from your approach of look at it from the point of view of the angels. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
I don't know where you came up with that, but it's like when you start to think of it that way, it's like, wow, it puts it in such a perspective.
I thought of that because someone mentioned that one of the main motivations of Satan was not necessarily pride, but envy.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they were going over reasons that the devil is envious of human beings, and our ability to create and our ability to procreate were two big parts of that, because the angels can do neither of those.
That's true. That's true.
I can't remember where I heard that, but it was a long time ago. Okay, well, then I guess we should get to the news.
Current events.
So remember there was that mass stabbing in Canada?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One guy was found
we thought
dead.
It was weird.
Yeah. And then the other guy was picked up finally and arrested. Name is Miles Sanderson, 30 years old. He was taken into custody and then shortly later reported dead.
Oh.
They are saying that they were from self-inflicted wounds.
Oh, okay.
Like maybe he was barely alive when they got to him, but I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, given
maybe
that
they
it
were
was
just
Canada,
angry.
I'm inclined to believe that.
Yeah. And then there's this... 4 people are killed, 3 others injured when a gunman goes on a live stream shooting spree in Memphis, Tennessee. That guy was arrested, 19-year-old. I think he was a black guy, and he was shooting white guys. I think that's what that was about. He had been sentenced to prison before. He had been sentenced to 3 years in prison, I think for assault, but he only served 11 months, and he was released in March, and now he went on a killing spree and killed several people. The condition of our jails is that if we don't have enough room, we just let people go.
Oh, right.
We're in a bad state.
The
right
overcrowding.
Now. And I know what long-term answers are for this. I don't know what any short-term answers are. We don't have enough
what I'm
jails
afraid
to hold number of prisoners.
are going to be answers is, things like, have you ever watched Escape Plan with Sylvester Stallone? Okay.
No.
It's worth a watch. It's not a great movie. It's an okay movie, but it has Jim Caviezel as the warden of a private jail. And so the idea is that jails are so overcrowded, and prisons especially, that they're turning to these so-called private prisons.
Which is the case right now.
Is that happening?
Yeah, a lot of prisons are privately owned entity. They're corporate prisons.
I did not know that. That scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, it ought to. And I think judges are, in some cases, judges are getting money to send people there.
Oh, wow.
I know that. I knew this was the case because I saw one where a judge had been bribed. He was finally convicted because he had sent so many juvenile kids to prison when they didn't need to be in prison. Yeah.
I would rather see criminals turned back onto the street because there's not enough room than to see privately owned and run prisons.
Yeah, it's a bad situation.
All right. Anyway.
Okay, but anyway, let's see. Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Poland and the Baltic states announce a ban on Russian tourists entering their countries beginning September 19th. I think this is such a weird announcement.
That's weird. How do you do that?
I don't know, but do they really have a problem with this? I mean,
are
that many Russians really trying to get to Poland to tour?
Maybe the idea is that,
I would think most of them would be scared anyway.
It's not like Russians are escaping Russia right now.
Yeah. Ukrainians are escaping Ukraine.
Yeah. So, if you say, "Oh, I'm from Russia. I'm here on business," does that mean that you're allowed in then?
Yeah,
that's weird. That to me is really weird.
If you went to Poland to defect from Russia, could you do that? Are Russians allowed to leave Russia?
I don't know about.
I don't think it's like it used to
leave.
be. Yeah,
it's not like the Soviet Union though. It's not like
right.
You're a big person of note, and we if you try to leave, we have to kill you. I don't think it's like that anymore.
Right. So it occurred to me that I don't think that many people.
My son
Russia
Max left
are
Russia.
trying to visit Poland. Huh? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, Max was from Russia.
Yeah, I mean, orphans, they cooperate with the Russian authorities. They get a new birth certificate that shows, in the new country, wherever they're moving to. And that's weird. Okay.
Of course, the big piece of news this week was the death of Queen Elizabeth II. That puts her son in charge as King Charles III. I don't ever remember having a king.
In England, not in our lifetime, no.
But I heard a recording of Queen Elizabeth before she was queen denouncing the monarchy and saying that it ought to be abolished.
Of course, once she became queen, she didn't do that.
Yeah, she didn't think that and she stayed a queen for a long time.
Of course, the thing is, Queen Elizabeth, her she was largely a figurehead. She represented England to the world. In theory, Parliament, each year when they did, whatever they did, they had to submit all of their work, their acts, to the Queen for approval. But it was just a kind of a rubber stamp thing. And maybe that's how she, I don't know, lived out her objection to the monarchy, is that she truly just rubber stamped acts of Parliament or something like that. I don't know.
Because I don't think King Charles III can say attack Spain.
Right? For example,
he's not a real monarch. So
it's a kind of a weird situation in England. I think the Prime Minister has more power than the King or Queen.
But what a lot of people might not have thought of is the fact that King Charles III is now the Pope of the Church in England.
Yeah. That's what, I never thought of that, because we only think of that in historically. But now that there's a changeover, I've started having questions about that. Because, the whole idea of the Anglican Church was that in England, this territory over which the king has authority, and it's kind of weird because I think like in the trial of Thomas More, it wasn't the king who was said to have higher power than the Pope; it was the Parliament.
I guess that would be.
I don't know. I don't remember.
I don't know about that because the Parliament.
And I'm only taking that from the play
to the King,
A Man for All Seasons.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the thing is, I think the king is the head of the Church of England or the Queen. So, is there such a thing as a Anglican Church outside of English? I mean, outside of England?
That's
are
why
there
I never
American Anglicans,
for example? Who's there?
And if the principle of Anglicanism is that the Pope is superseded by the king because he's the juridical king of this territory, England, then what does that mean for Anglicans outside of England? Or like in the United States, we have the Episcopal Church, which I think is like the United States brand of Anglicanism or something like that.
And then
how does that all work?
Joe Biden should be in charge of that, I would think.
Yeah. Why isn't Joe Biden the at least titular head of the Episcopal Church in the United States?
Yeah, I will say that it's odd. I think the fact that we've got the Church of England broke off from the real church, is no longer the real church, does not have the real mass or real confession, and yet they've kept a lot of the traditional flair of the church.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. That, in terms of the rituals services, and stuff, you mean?
Yeah. The rituals seem to be more traditional than the Novus Ordo. At the same time, they have ignored the doctrines of the church.
Yeah, so it's like we'll throw out the doctrine and keep the track. That is kind of the English way, though. And I only say that because once upon a time, a couple decades ago, I read an article in some magazine. I think it was a Catholic magazine about Victorianism, like Queen Victoria, and there's this concept of like Victorian, etiquette and Victorian sensibilities and that kind of stuff.
Architecture?
No, not architecture, but more like interactions and modes of dress and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And the point of the article had a lot of like historical data to back itself up, but the point of the article was that I think it even like kind of related itself to abortion a little bit. But the point of the article was that Victorian England was more concerned with appearances than with the underlying realities behind them. Okay, and so as long as you appeared correct, it didn't matter what you did that nobody saw.
That would
maybe there's a little bit of that bleeding over into the Anglican kind of the right versus the doctrine kind of thing.
I guess so. I wonder what's going to happen now that the Church of England has a new head.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Will that even be a thing for Charles? Will he even do anything in that regard?
And if he didn't, then is it possible for someone else to? Could one of the bishops or all the bishops together make a change against his will or without his will? I don't understand, but it's...
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
We'll have to look into that.
We'll come back sometime with a podcast about the Church of England and the I mean, nobody, I think, who listens to this podcast is unaware that the Church of England is not the real church.
Yeah.
But how it really works and how it's structured, that's kind of a head-scratcher for me.
Would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
North Korea passed a law formally declaring itself a nuclear state.
They said we have nukes and we are going to engage the world on that level. I guess that's what that means?
Yeah, and it reserves the right of North Korea to use a preemptive nuclear strike.
Wow. That's interesting, because, I mean, you know that North Korea, as it is right now...
I don't think they have nukes.
They probably don't even have nukes, and if they did, a preemptive strike, okay, they can't possibly have enough nukes to preemptively strike someone to such a degree that they would not be fully annihilated in response.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. I mean, North Korea could literally disappear from the map with a number of...
The only thing I could see, the only way I could see this going is that they get into an alliance with China where they get China's agreement to back a preemptive strike against, I don't know, some other country.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can see this playing out in any way that might ensure North Korea's continued existence.
Yeah. I wish, I mean, the whole question of North Korea seemed to be well in hand when Trump was president. And now it's kind of like, I don't know. Is this guy...
Yeah, what are they doing? It's kind of funny because Trump, I mean, I even felt a little bit disappointed. He said, "Oh yeah, Kim Jong-un, I kind of like the guy." Yeah, he almost seemed friendly with him. But
almost fatherly.
At the same time, when he was president, we did not worry about North Korea.
Right. Oh well. So that was their law. So okay, a new lunar material is discovered by the Beijing Research Institute.
Seriously?
They call it Change Site. ChangeSite. It's a phosphate mineral in like crystal form that's found in lunar basalt particles.
So are these particles that I mean, how was there a lunar landing that we missed in our news?
They're saying China's Change 5 mission returned about like close to 3.5 pounds of lunar material.
Oh, so they say that they did have a lunar landing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's maybe not. I mean,
it's
it's
hard
not
to
like
trust.
if they're saying it, they're lying, but it's like if they're saying it, they might be lying. You can't just take them at their word.
They don't seem to. Well, okay, here's two problems. Number one, they don't seem to share the material with the rest of the world so that other scientists can check up on them. Number two, we're at a point where we can't really trust anyone in the rest of the world to check up on anything. As the whole scientific world has become so untrustworthy as it's been politicized, not just in America and China, and pretty much everywhere.
I still don't feel that way about NASA.
That's what I was going to say. NASA's the one place
in some way politicized, but I don't feel that they're untrustworthy or untransparent in any way.
Yeah. Speaking of NASA, they revealed photos from the James Webb Space Telescope. These are some of the first photos of the Orion Nebula.
Oh. Wow.
I assume that they have pictures of forming stars and solar systems that maybe we haven't seen before. I didn't look at them yet, but that kind of stuff is always interesting. I mean, if we've got better pictures of forming solar systems, we might have a better idea of how our solar system came into existence. Maybe why Earth is so much different from all the other planets in its distance from the sun and its size and what it's made of.
All of the models out there for solar system formation, Earth should not exist. That's what's really weird.
And this giant moon that we have, the singular giant moon. That's just, it's an oddity. So maybe we can find out why. Who knows? That's all the news I got.
All right. I don't have a whole lot of news this time. I have like 3 items. I think I sent you the thing so you can look at it. So, okay, the first one is really kind of interesting, and it's like cultural interesting. Obviously, it's not a real thing, but these archaeologists in Poland believe that they've discovered the remains of a woman who was believed to be a vampire and was buried with like vampire the things you would do in order to keep a vampire from coming back from the grave and stuff like that.
Like a stake to the heart type of stuff?
A sickle around her neck and a triangular padlock on her foot. According to ancient beliefs, this was supposed to prevent a deceased person, thought to be a vampire, from returning from the dead.
Okay. Triangular padlock.
On her foot.
How old is
I don't know what a triangular
to
padlock means. I think the sickle is the big thing. The sickle around her neck.
So when did this woman die? Or how old are they saying these remains are?
Let me see if I can find. So the planet protected. 17th century.
Centuries later. Okay, 17th century.
1800s. 1800s.
Did they have padlocks in the 1800s?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I think they had them in the 1600s.
Did they? Okay. I didn't know that. Well, that is interesting.
Burned, destroyed rocks, heads, legs cut off, such as... I mean, it is kind of interesting. Somebody who the people who buried her thought she was a vampire. That could be, I guess, sociologically interesting or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not the first one. They said that they've found 6 so-called vampire skeletons at a cemetery in northwest Poland in 2014.
I wonder if there's like a rash of something happening at the time where it's like suddenly everybody thought everybody was a vampire, and they're like, all right, from now on, we're putting a padlock on every person we
everybody. Kind of like
that does it.
Yeah, it's like if there was a similar practice for how to bury witches, in Salem in the United States.
Or maybe
I don't care whether you're a witch or not, but we're going to do this stuff when we bury you.
Yeah. There's like maybe a trial, and it was like you 20 people are convicted of vampirism, and therefore we're going to put you to death and bury you this way.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows?
It says that the sickle was put there around the neck because the idea was that if they tried to get up, they would basically automatically cut their head off.
The things that you do in superstitions are so odd. You know? Like, why... If she can get up, why can't she just take the sickle and take it off her neck?
Take it off before she gets up. The thing is,
so weird.
If she could get up after she's dead, why would losing her head stop her? Just grab her head and put it back on. It's like, I mean, it's kind of like Jesus Christ, the resurrection. Well, do we think that if they had cut his head off, somehow that would have stopped the resurrection?
Yeah.
Okay, so lady walks into a bar with a raccoon. Sounds like the start of a joke, doesn't it?
Yep.
Well, apparently that was the whole story. She walked into a North Dakota bar with a raccoon. The bar owner, to me, the nonsense is the fact that this is even news.
Yeah.
Because, raccoons, I mean, I know we associate them with getting into trash, knocking your trash cans over and that kind of stuff, but they're not nasty creatures the way possum are or rats are. You know what I mean?
Right, they're not quite as gross.
To me, raccoons are a little bit like tiny bears or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she walked into the bar, she had it, and the bar tender said about 10 people in the saloon at the time, asked the woman to leave, and she kind of got up. She finally got up to leave, but then showed it to somebody else before she went out. Finally, she left the bar. The reason this is a news story, somebody decided it's newsworthy because it prompted health officials to come and, give talks about rabies and that kind of stuff. Well,
rabies?
Yeah, I mean, if the raccoon was rabid, the woman would not have been able to hold the raccoon.
Yeah. But
anyway,
I can see asking her to leave because it's like having a dog,
Yeah. I mean, a pet in a bar. Area, hey, we don't have pets in here. So, leave, but to be newsworthy?
I don't know why it's in the news, except that
but
a reporter has to write something.
It's a slow news day.
He's talking about Biden, and this is all I can find.
That's right. Well, we can't write about the stuff that's obvious. So let's find something.
You know what I saw? Well, go ahead.
Well, no, what's that?
I went to AutoZone to pick up a part, and this girl walked in. She had a lemur.
Really? Wow. I don't think
Sitting
I've
on
ever
her
seen
shoulder.
a lemur live.
I have never either, except other than the zoo. But it was
it was
tame.
One at the zoo.
It wasn't even on a collar or anything. It was just
followed her around.
No, she had it on her shoulder. It was pretty small.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It was a fairly small one, and it sat on her shoulder the whole time. It was pretty cool looking.
Well, this I found interesting because I found it surprising. It says 6 rabid animals have been reported in North Dakota. And North Dakota is, kind of like wild country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
a big area. Yeah. And it's wild.
This year, 2 bats, 2 cats, 1 bovine, and 1 skunk. Only 6 for the whole year so far. This is, through 8 months of the year in North Dakota. Only 6 rabid animals so far.
But I can see the cats.
Okay.
I guess I could see the
bats,
cow.
maybe. I mean, the bats could go and, like, if they're blood-sucking bats,
they
could go.
If you
don't
found
see
a
the
bat, no. Why would anyone test a bat for rabies?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You would only test a bat for rabies if it had bitten someone.
Right.
Well,
that must mean 2 people have gotten bit by a bat.
By rabid bats.
Yeah.
Well, I think bats, and see, that's the thing. I think bats generally don't bite people if they're not rabid, other than a
or
certain
even if
kind
they
of
are.
bat.
I mean,
Well,
a
it
bat
doesn't-
has to get out of its primary mode of transportation in order to bite someone. It has to land on you, or you have to have touched it somehow.
Well, that's
you know?
true. It's like you have to have picked it up somehow.
I can't imagine how that happens. But then again, I can, because Pee-wee got bit by a bat.
Did he really? That surprises me.
He was... I have no idea how he ended up touching it with his hands, but a bat got into his house, he knocked it down, he picked it up to take it outside, and it bit him.
Huh. So that was like a purely defensive, like,
Yeah.
you've got a hold of me, the only thing I have left for defense is my mouth.
Teeth. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
But if you're at that point, it's like, if they're able to catch it and send it to be tested, I don't know. It's just kind of odd.
That is odd. But, yeah, okay, so I see the cats, what does a rabid cow look like?
I don't know. I heard a story about a rabid goat.
Oh, really? What did that look like?
I guess it just started getting real mean, the way rabid dogs will, and it would, like, buck anything that it saw move. You know, if
like run up and like not necessarily biting, but running into everything.
Yeah, it was trying to hurt whatever tool that it had, whether it's bucking it or using its hooves or biting it in some cases.
Okay, so just
harm.
extreme
It just
aggression.
got really grumpy at first, then aggressive, then to the point where it's like just knocking itself into a wall and doing weird things like that.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the progression of rabies, I think.
Yeah, and so I guess a cow would do the same thing.
All right. I would hate to be on the receiving end of that from a cow.
Right. That is one giant animal I would not want to have. Man.
Yeah. All right. And my next one, I mean, because I'm heading out for a couple of weeks, I just had to leave you with a bear story.
Oh, no.
I know how you love bears. This one came to a 2-year-old kid's birthday party.
Oh, yeah? Crashed the party?
He crashed the party. The people started yelling at him, so he went over to the table and started eating the cupcakes.
I wonder, if you're a bear and you are, I guess you could pretty much ignore everyone. It's not until somebody shows up with a gun that you have any... I wonder if... are they afraid of humans? I guess not.
Or anything. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, I wonder if... they say that lion is the king of the forest.
Yeah.
But I think bears kind of are the same way in America.
So. And if you're... Okay, the fact... Obviously, bears will eat human stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you're yelling at one and it's not going away, to me that indicates it has no fear of people and ought to be put down. Because bears, like every wild animal, should have a natural fear of people.
Yeah. Hold on just a minute.
Not having that would make it dangerous.
So yeah, they're clearly not afraid of people.
Yeah.
What's funny is like
the
last part of this news story. It says the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, DEEP. I don't know. Somebody made that up. Encourages people to yell at the bear and make a lot of noise. I don't think it mattered to the bear.
Yeah. As long as I have a gun, I'll do that. But if I have no gun, I'm not going to do that.
It's like, I don't want to draw attention to myself. I'm going to let the bear have what he wants. I'm going to walk the other way or run the other way or something. But the thing is, like, when you see bears in, let's say, non-ferocious settings, they just look gentle, don't they?
I have never thought that.
I think you with bears is like me with snakes. You never thought that bears look gentle when they're not ferocious.
To me, A bear is a giant animal that could easily kill you. And that's all it is.
I don't know. I think bears look, it's like, oh yeah, they look, cute and whatever. But of course, the thing is when they roar, or when they like stand up on their hind legs, or when they charge, it's like, wow, watch out for that. It's kind of interesting.
More dangerous than a lion.
A bear is, to me, a bear is kind of like a metaphor for innocence. Because, you think of innocence, okay, innocence is calm and non-threatening and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But if something is really fully innocent and therefore completely in tune with how things should be, and then you threaten that, it becomes ferocious.
Yeah.
I almost think of bears that way.
I guess. Because, like, when they're hunting, if you watch a lion hunt, mm-hmm. it's an active, ferocious thing to watch.
The whole thing is. Okay.
Whereas bears, when they're hunting, I've never seen bear hunt a regular animal.
Do they actually hunt?
I don't think they do, but they will eat meat if they find it.
Oh, okay.
No, wait a minute. Because I've seen them hunt seals. You can see videos of that.
Right.
They look more like they're picking a plant out of the ground. They look that calm about it,
Oh, here's a seal.
Yeah.
Here's an apricot.
Yeah.
Well, that's I think that's kind of how I tend to see them. I would never want to be around one unconstrained.
I don't want anything to do with bears.
All right. Well, anyway, don't have a 2-year-old party with cupcakes then.
Yeah.
At least not in Connecticut.
Not in bear country.
Not in bear country. Well, what's funny is that apparently he showed up while they were playing the soundtrack "Bare Necessities" from the Disney Jungle Book movie.
Yeah, I'll bet he did. I'll bet that
might have been made up.
Yeah.
That might have been made up. I don't know.
Too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. Anyway. That is all I have. Only 3 stories today.
All right.
Oh, wait. But we should have a Bible.
Okay.
We should have a Bible trivia, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me pull my cards out and let me roll my dice. I didn't get a real die this time yet. I still need to get one. All right, online dice roller. Number 1, Old Testament. Who was the man from the land of Uz, or Uz? U-Z is how it's spelled here.
Yeah. I remember seeing the land of Uz, and I don't remember who it was that was from there, though. I have no idea.
Because I know that Abraham was from Ur, U-R.
Maybe I'm thinking of Ur. No, I know I've seen it.
Yeah, no, I've seen it too, because one of my kids was reading the Bible, and he says, like, okay, so is it U-Z or U-T-Z? Because the modern Bible translations have it one way, but the Douay Rheims has it, I think, U-T-Z. Who was the man from the land of Uz or Utz? Okay, I do not know, so I'm going to turn it over and find the answer. It is, Job!
Job?
Job is from Uz. Okay, let me. Okay, and they only give where he's from at the very beginning of the book of Job.
Yeah, and I don't think we have any geographical sense of where Uz is, do we?
No, in fact, I mean, Job may not have been one of those guys who actually existed. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Job is actually worth reading. It's kind of interesting. Job, I mean, I do a thing where I read the Bible according to a plan by the New St. Thomas Institute, where every day you've got Old Testament historical reading, Old Testament wisdom literature reading, which starts with the Psalms, and then the New Testament. And so it progresses through all three throughout. It's supposed to be like the Bible in a year kind of thing, and they have readings for each day. I don't worry about the year thing. I just do the next thing, and then when I get to the end of it, I start over.
Yeah.
But now I've read the book of Job twice, and not just read through it in a sitting, but read, a chapter or two each day, time to reflect on it, that kind of stuff. And each time that I've read it, it's like, oh wait, I see nuances and I see interplays of the characters that I didn't see before. Like the first time I read it, I was completely confused. It's like, well,
I've never read it.
This doesn't sound like the book of Job that was described to me. But then the second time I read it, it's like, okay, wait a minute, I can see a little bit of the interplay going on here. So, anyway, Job is from Uz or Utz or whatever the right pronunciation for that land is, which may or may not be a real land, because Job may or may not be a real person.
Okay.
And there's your Bible trivia for the day.
All right. Well, think about what we said, and as always,
go raw, circle the beads.
And we'll see you probably in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'll be out of the country. Maybe we'll have something to post next week, but it won't be like a chat like this.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Well, thanks.